Well, g'day folks, welcome to another episode of Learn to Paint TV. Rod Moore here with you again. Now, in this week's episode, we're going to do a painting from a little sketch, because often in our Learn to Paint TV, usually I'm using a photo reference of a photo that I've taken. And I thought today we'd just mix it up a little bit. And I've done a little sketch of an idyllic sort of country scene, landscape scene. And I want to show you how you can create your own sketches and turn those into great little paintings, which then gives you endless opportunities for painting, right? So let's have a look at the little sketch that I've done. And I've called it The Quiet Life in the Country, and who doesn't want that, right? A quiet life in the country. And as you can see, it's a pretty simple little sketch. Okay, so we're going to use, of course, the Moore method of painting here today. It's 3 steps, 3 colors and 3 brushes. And we'll start off with step 1 in our drawing. I'm going to use just a tiny little flat brush here, and we'll use our basic colors on our palette. So I've got a little bit of French ultramarine blue and the permanent alizarin crimson. I'm going to use those as step 1 for our drawing. So I'll just get a little bit of water on my brush. We'll just take some of that paint and we'll just mix up a little dark. Now you don't have to get this mix perfect, just the combination of the two is all we need here, right? The key here is a little bit more water into that. We'll just loosen that paint up, make it like an ink-like consistency. So we're going to start here, step 1 with our drawing. We need to find, and by the way, I've got a 12-inch by 16-inch MDF board. It's a little board that I prepared. I bought the board at the hardware store and just added in a coat of gesso and so on. If you're interested in how do you prepare boards, look out for my Art Studio chat video. Okay, so now we do have a little hill that runs around about through there. Okay, runs that way. And then we've got another one that comes up sort of on a hill there, and so on. So we'll just get those in, and that'll help us then work out, well, where does this cottage need to sit? So the cottage is going to sit on a base around about there, perhaps. So just take care not to get too big with this too early. If you start your drawing off big, you know, there's not really anywhere we can go with it, if that makes sense. It's very easy to get your drawing too big. If it ends up too big, of course, then we'll have to wipe it all out and redo it, which we can do, we just prefer not to do. Okay, so we'll just run that one down there. So these lines here may have to change if we haven't quite got it right. We should be right though. Let's just continue with where we're up to here. Get that one there. So this is just an old farmhouse, old cottage, probably stone. And over time they get added onto. Extensions and so on. Well, that one probably needs to come a bit more down that way. Get that one in there. We'll run one out there. Run that one into there. Okay, it's not looking too bad, is it? Little start of something, which is all you can really ask for at this early stage, a little start of something. A little bit of a chimney there. There's going to be a chimney there. Probably going to be a chimney out the back there. Okay. Now I think that's not bad. Let's put a few trees and things around it, and that will help us to just firm up. So if you have a look at the little sketch, you can see that there's trees around the back, and then there's trees in the foreground, and then we'll work out our hills. So I probably made my hills too big, but we'll work those out, everything else around it. So going okay at this stage, I feel. So let's get a few trees in here, and we'll just make up some tree-like sort of shapes. We'll obviously work out the shapes a bit better as we progress. I've got a few out this way here, a little bit of a, don't make them all the same size and shape, that's important. Okay, we'll run those down to there. Okay, so sit those into there. And then we've got in to make this cottage sit into the ground, we need to have some shrubs and bushes and things in front of the cottage, and that will just help to just set it down into the landscape there. Okay, I think that's working. I'll just put a little bit extra blue into that mix there, just to get a little bit cooler in tone. And then coming out of these trees here, I think we'll do a little sort of mountain peak there. So maybe that one can come up a little bit higher there. And maybe we've got a tree that's going to sit in there just to block that one in there. So it's going to sit around about there. So I have a couple of little mountains in there in the distance, as you would expect, in a nice little country scene. And then let's say we're going to have a path that's going to wander through this painting, and it's going to run right past this cottage. Maybe it's the path into town, who knows. Okay, we're getting to step 2 here now, and I've just put out a bit of yellow ochre onto our palette as well, and some titanium white. I've got a medium to large flat hog hair bristle brush. I want to start getting in some darks in here. What we'll do is I'll start off initially with the darks in front of the cottage. So we'll just go the blue and the red there. Okay, and we'll just put in some indications here of some bushes and so on that might be sitting in front of the cottage. These are going to be sort of in the darkest dark sort of range for these bushes. And remember, this is just our shadow tone that we're putting in here. Okay. We'll get a little bit of that corner there. And I'm thinking that we might just even introduce a shadow from a tree that's over on the right hand side here that you won't see. Just a shadow that's going to break up that foreground there from that tree. So it's a tree that's out of the picture, but its shadow is certainly in there. The reason why that's important is it gets the eye to sort of move into the painting there. Okay, so it's a bluey grey. We don't want it to be warm and as dark as those foreground darks. We want this to sit back in the distance a bit. So we'll just block that in. And it gives us a chance here now to just start to shape up around the roof of that cottage. Don't worry if you lose the chimney at this stage. Okay, so there's a tree sitting out behind. Just take your time and block it in. And notice these outer edges here, these shapes that we've got that we're creating for these trees. That's important. The rest of the blocking, you don't need to do anything special because that's in the mass of that dark shadow. But certainly the outer edges is what's going to tell the eye, tell the viewer that you're looking at a group of trees. Okay, so it is pretty important that we get those looking reasonably right, those outer edges. Now we will come back in and shape those, of course, a bit more, but if we start out as we intend to finish, I think that's probably not a bad idea. Go for a slightly cooler version here now. And just work it down in behind that tree that's closer to us. That bush that's closer to us. Probably need a little bit of red and a little bit of yellow into it, just to grey it back a bit. But let's now have a look at this hillside here. Might run that through a bit more to there. So this is now a step further back. It needs to be lighter in value than the trees here, obviously. And just a little bit cooler in tone as well. So create a nice little rolling hill like you'd find in the countryside there in Wales. Why do we use an orangey tone, which I'm now going to pop into my fields here? Because it's a complement of green. We're going to have some luscious green fields in here. And if we underpaint it with an orangey tone or a reddy tone first, red is the natural complement of green. So that being the case, we'll underpaint first with our red. And when we lay our greens over the top of that, those greens are going to just have a bit more vibrancy and a bit more life. You don't have to do it this way, it's just the way I've found, and a lot of my students at the Learn to Paint Academy have found that works well for them. So if you haven't tried it this way, give it a try. Rather than just applying greens down directly, the problem with green is it can be a bit tricky to get it to look life, have a bit of life, a bit of energy. Now we've started off with a slightly lighter value for that tone, but as we come forward here, I'm going to strengthen it up. So in effect, we've got a bit of a gradient of value. Now, as the cottage is the centre of interest, I'm not going to do any work on it in this step 2, our blocking step. I'm going to leave that all to step 3. Really, I like blocking in around my main centre of interest, and then work on the centre of interest as I get closer to the end and bring that up to a stronger value at that point. Okay, so I'll just scoop up a fair bit of that paint there. Let's just run some of that into the lower parts of the sky. I'll just be careful as I come around my mountain here. Let me show you a closer up. Okay, so just work around the edges of those trees. We'll keep it soft and pastel-y, like so. Okay, and I'll just work that in where I haven't got the pink, and then we'll just connect the two and we'll create a nice sort of pastel-y, hazy scene here. So just to show you that I'll just use that white. You can see I've spilled a bit of water, so it's a little bit on the dirty side. And then I've got that blue there. Now I don't mind if it's on the dirty side a little bit. It grays it back. You don't want your water too dirty. Probably want to change it every few days or so. But if it gets a little bit dirty, then it's going to have some grey in it. Let's just smudge some of that together. I've got to be careful because working on the board, the gesso I've used on this, it's not really taking the paint that well. So I've just got to be careful I don't end up with thinner patches of that paint there. In fact, what we might do is just get more paint, more blue and white. I think we're pretty well on track with this one. It's going to turn out to be a ripper little country scene there. I think you'll enjoy having a go at this one. So we'll pause here momentarily. I'll let this fully dry, which won't take long. And then we'll be right back with part 2, where we'll do step number 3. our details, highlights, finishing touches, where we really start to bring this little painting to life. It should be a ripper. I'll see you after the break. Okay, welcome back. We're now going to do step 3 of the Moore method of painting, which is where we start getting our details, our highlights, finishing touches, and so on. We'll start to bring this painting together, and I think it's going to make a nice little painting. This is where we're up to. We've got our blocking done. We've got a bit of atmosphere happening in the painting, and we're really ready to now start to bring this one to life. And I think it's going to turn out a little ripper. Just down on our palette here, I've refreshed our French ultramarine blue, the permanent alizarin crimson, and the yellow ochre. I've added a bit of cadmium yellow, and we've got some more titanium white, so we're pretty well good to go. And let's get underway with step 3. What I'll do now is I'll take a smaller flat brush, one like so, and we'll just get a little bit of work happening in the back of those trees there. So we'll get a bit of a green happening around about here. So a bit of the blue, a bit of yellow ochre. Okay. Tiniest little pinhead of the white in there. I'll keep it slightly on the yellow side. Now let's just test that. Now whenever you're doing those highlights and so on, it's always good not to have too much paint in the brush, because too much paint on the brush will end up on the canvas. So I'll just take a little bit out with the paper towel. So I'll just pull it through the paper towel, and then I'll just load up the tip of that brush. And we'll come here to this tree, and we'll just work some highlighted sort of foliage tones in there. Blend it into the sky area there. And just really gently. If I've got any white gaps there, I can take the opportunity just to fill those in. Now this is a mid-tone. This is not necessarily going to be our highlight tone. We can always come back with a warmer tone as a highlight if we wanted to. Not so much on the outset, the outer extremities where there'll be more light coming through, but as you come down to the body of a big tree like this, it's going to have a lot more shadow hiding away into it. Okay. Especially if the light's coming from the right hand side, as we said earlier. So if you can preserve some of that dark, then you'll get a much more realistic looking tree, because we need to have a dark, a mid-tone, and a highlight tone to get that sort of three-dimensional shape. I'll take some cad yellow, I'll pop it there, we'll get a little bit of blue. Okay, I might pop a little bit of red into that. Whoop, that's a bit much. Actually, let's go slightly that kind of tone. And I'm just going to change it up and add another little tree in the front here. Okay. We'll use white. It's going to be a white cottage, right? But we're going to paint the shadow side first. So we'll go blue and red and a little touch of the yellow. Okay. Mostly blue and red and white. A little touch of the yellow just to push it a bit grayer. Okay. Now that's probably not a dark enough shadow. So we'll just go and we'll add more blue and more red and a little pinhead of the yellow. Okay, you can see that's darkened up. Is that dark enough? I don't think so, because we're going slightly later in the day, aren't we? So a bit more blue and red. Needs to be more blue than red. So I've just got the balance wrong there. See that? I've got a little bit too much. Let me come to the palette cam for you. A little bit too much red in that mix. So need a bit more blue, because it's going to be on the cool side of the building. Okay, a little touch more the yellow. You can see now it's very much on the blue side. But that's okay. I think that's closer. I'll add a touch more yellow to take the saturation out of it, grey it back a bit. So it's now more of a bluey grey. See that? Basic colour mixing, which you can learn in our colour mixing course. Let me come up here now. We've got a close-up of our building. So this wall and this wall are going to be in shadow. So let me just run that down. Okay. We'll come back in and we'll put that window in a bit later. Okay, so there's a shadow for that wall. And then we'll do the same on this wall here. And this will start to give us a feeling of 3 dimensions. So just take your time and be careful with this part. Now, this wall here is slightly turned away from the light, whereas these two are facing directly to the light. So what I'll do is I'll take some more white, mix it on the edge there, and we'll get a shadow tone, but not as strong as the other 2 shadow walls there. Okay. Like so. And then these walls here that are going to be catching a bit of light, I'll clean my brush off. And we'll take some white, but we'll just get a little bit of this pink that's left over on the palette here. So you've got this little bit of pink from the sky. We'll just pop a little bit of that into the white, because that sky tone will rather than use a pure white, we'll just tint it slightly with that sky tone. It'll just warm it up slightly. Okay, it's good. Now for the roof, I think we'll just do a slaty type colour. We'll go with our blue and our red, a touch of the purple in there. And let's just try that. Get a little touch bluer in there. Now you can see I just mucked up a little bit there, which is why it's important to keep that previous tone rather than mixing over the top of it. Just keep a little bit of that available, and then I can come in with my little brush here, come back to that darker shadow there. I really need my glasses to do that, but like so. I'll take the little brush with that roof colour there. Just run that up into there. We'll take our blue, bit of cadmium yellow, a little bit of yellow ochre. Touch of white in there. We'll start off at the back. Pick up a little bit of that red. There we go. So just a muted lighter green. And it's okay to allow some of that underpainting to show through. In fact, it's probably desirable to do that. As you can see there, it's coming through quite nicely. Got a little touch more yellow, cadmium yellow there, just to brighten it up as we come in. Now we've not yet tackled those bushes in front of the cottage, but I'll put a little flick of grass up here and there over the top of them. And you can see I'm just brightening it all up as I come forward, just to make those grasses a little bit more vibrant, having a little bit more oomph. Oomphl's a technical term, of course, technical painting term. Now I don't want it to be too bright down in the bottom corner there. So there I'll just push back more blue, little pinhead of red. See that? Nice sort of muted green in there. We don't want to draw the eye into that section there. So we just want a bit of a dark. And we want to get in a couple of doors and things. So I don't mind if they're a little bit rough, on the rough side really. Okay, let us get some more vibrant green happening here now. And just with a little bit of paint on the brush, not too much. It's fairly punchy, isn't it? I don't want that everywhere though, so we'll get a bit of yellow ochre into some of it. leave part of it in shadow as well. In fact, I probably need a little bit more shadow into that part there. But I can get a little bit of this punchier green with the cadmium yellow. And let's just run some of that in through here. Just lighten it all up. Now I'm going to get down to our script liner brush. So you notice we get down to our script liner brush right at the end. We don't want to be utilising it too early. So I'll get some white, so just a little script liner brush. It's actually a watercolour brush is the one I use. I'll mix up a little pink, get a little bit red up. There we go. I'll take that. Couple of little highlights there. Clean that out. Get some of this closer to white here. Just a few little details like that will really start to pick it up. Changes, little touches. Let's get just a little tiny little puff of smoke in here. Always do your smoke against a dark tree, which is part of the reason why we put trees around the cottage like so. I think overall we've created a nice little scene. There's obviously a lot more you could do, but we've created a nice little scene there that anyone can have a go at that. And as you've seen, I've just made that up from a little sketch in my sketchbook. Let's have a look. There's the sketch. Okay, and I haven't copied the sketch laboriously or, you know, completely, but enough to get a nice little scene. Could be anywhere, in, as I said, in the UK or in Wales or even Australia, except for the architecture. So folks, I hope you've enjoyed this week's episode of Learn to Paint TV. It's a nice little country setting, nice little cottage there, a fun little project. It's got a bit of atmosphere and a bit of life, and you can see a little bit of light happening in there as well. And I think you'll enjoy having a go at this one. Definitely one to try. Make sure you take a little bit of time with the cottage, get your proportions right. That's the key there, right? The drawing is important, so make sure you get your drawing right. And hope you've enjoyed this episode. I'll see you next week on Learn to Paint TV. Up on the screen here, I'll put the web address for all the episodes of Learn to Paint TV. Just go to the www.learntopaint.tv. And if you'd like a free course on how you can learn more about the Moore method of painting and the process we've just gone through here today, I'll give you 4 or 5 painting demonstrations and a more in-depth discussion around the Moore method of painting. Then go to Learn to Paint Academy. So you can see the web address underneath me and look for where it says free course. Now you'll need to register, but then you'll get access to a complete free course, and you'll learn more about what we do here at Learn to Paint Academy. Hope you've enjoyed this episode. I'll see you next week on Learn to Paint TV. Cheers for now.